MTX Audio has been around since the early 1980s, but didn't release their first audio amplifier until around 1988 with the Blue Thunder series. The BGA2125 is shown here. The amp was actually made by Orion for MTX and is shown here in this 1988 directory, $439. This was the only one of the three that ever went public. The other two models shown there did not. Around 1990, they released the MTX Terminator, MTA225 and MTA250. You can check the link in the video description. I have a couple videos on these amps, which were made by Precision Power for MTX. Fast forward to 1994, and the MTX Black Gold BGA2125 was the first MTX in-house design of an audio amplifier. These were popular amps, but only made for a couple years, 1994 to 1995, and also they had speakers and other things with the black gold nomenclature. Let's look at the 1994 Car Audio and Electronics directory. We see the BGA2125 here at the top. $649 US in 1994 is equivalent to approximately $1,240 in 2022, so not a cheap amp by any standards. 1995 Car Audio and Electronics directory, the black gold amp was also listed, the BGA2125, at the same price, $649 US. It was available in black and also a white color with black, but there was no other black gold amps made at the time. No 4 channels, no other mono blocks or anything like that, just a 2-channel amplifier. We'll talk about the specs here in a little bit. So we got these amps in all the way from Germany. Our friend the Amp Guru, we purchased these just as soon as he posted them online because I really wanted to get my hands on them and I wanted to try them out and see how they worked. And here's the way he listed them. Very cool background. Check out amp-guru.com. He always has really cool stuff listed. Even though he's in Germany, it only takes less than a week to get here to the US. Here you can see the exterior, which is a matte black finish, and it does have an acrylic center plate that has the logo, the model name, as well as a few of these LEDs. And we'll get to those later in the video to talk about what each one does. So on one side of the amp, you can see the RCA inputs, left and right. There are dual gain controls, so you have one for each channel, which back in the early days was something that was kind of standard. And we have the speaker terminals, which MTX used insert terminals way back in the day. These are appreciated even though they are kind of small, approximately 12 gauge for the speaker connectors. And there you can see how to bridge the amp, the left positive and right negative. On the other side of the amp, very simple, has a 40 amp maxi fuse. And then it has the power input, power, ground, and remote. This is an 8 gauge for power and ground, so we use very short leads. Now, some of the features, 18 dB per octave subsonic filter. It does not give us a frequency. Has a fiberglass 4-layer gold-plated PCB board. Synchronized dual power supply, which we'll talk about that later too. Fuzzy logic rail control. Now, what's this all about? According to the manual, it illuminates green during normal operations, yellow when the amp is reaching maximum output, and orange when the circuit is controlling parameters of the amp. As far as ratings go, 125 watts per channel at 4 ohms, 250 per channel at 2 ohms, or you can bridge the amp mono for 500 watts to power your subwoofers or other low frequency drivers. It also is 2 to 8 ohms compliant, 12 to 15 volts, and we'll get into the dimensions right here. The length 16 inches, the width 8 inches, the height 2.25 inches. The millimeter equivalents are there as well. Now we got the amp all connected up. We fire it up and we'll see the power as well as the FLRC green lights, which is a good sign. We got it connected up to the good old amplifier dyno. First off, we're going to try the stereo test. We are going to test all the different tests at 40 hertz. For the stereo test, we have all the speaker jacks hooked up straight to the dyno. 12 gauge OFC connection here for the speaker wires. Amp is rated 125 watts per channel. It is a regulated design, so anywhere between 12 and 15. We're trying to keep it around 14 if possible. Certified run, we get 147 watts per channel at 14.22. So that's plus the rating with a little more, but the ratings are less than 1% THD. So it looks like these are rated right at the appropriate values. Uncertified to clipping 154 and 152. Just a very slight difference in the channels there. Not bad at all. Again, you never know the difference between just a few watts. Dynamic power, do not expect this amp to have large dynamic power because of the regulation circuit and the power supply. 156 and 152 at about 14.2. Efficiency 56%. It should not be expected to be higher because this is a Class AB amp. You know, kind of an early design back in the 80s. 2 ohms is rated 250 watts by 2. Let's start the certified test here to 1% THD. There you go, 264 and 261 right at 14 volts. Let's reset the dyno here for the uncertified test, which takes us up to the clipping point. And yeah, 271 per channel, right at 13.9 volts. Dynamic test here, 40 hertz, 2 ohms stereo. A little bit more difference in the channels, but again, that's really nothing. 274, 267 at 14 volts. Efficiency did drop a little bit, 45.7%. Now let's bridge the amplifier mono. Again, test at 40 hertz. And let's use, as according to the manual here, according to the amp, the left positive, right negative. And this is going to be our bridging. It's rated 500 watts. Again, between 12 and 15 volts. Let's try a certified test first. And 538, 14 volts. So it did its rated power plus some. Uncertified, up to clipping. A little bit more. 544 at 13.97. It will be a note that the 40 amp fuse did not survive these tests with 4 ohms mono or 2 ohms stereo. I had to actually replace it with a larger fuse so I could do these tests. Dynamic 547 at 14.1 volt. Efficiency around 46%. Again, no shockers there with the Class AB amp. Results here, you pretty much just saw all these different tests. I actually did have some other tests where the voltage was a little bit higher. So I hooked this up to the AGM bank so we could get the voltage down to more acceptable levels. Overall, the amp did well, did its rated power. So very nice there. Now let's find out what's inside. And before we open the amp up, we're going to have to get out our precision screwdriver set. Check link in the video description if you want to pick one of these up. The Torx head screw that's, or Torx head bit that's needed to get these screws out. And I did have 2 of the amps, as I mentioned earlier. I got both from the Amp Guru. And one of them looks a little bit darker on the circuit board, but very close in color here. And you can see the only hot part is right there in the center, some kind of resistor there in the center. Other than that, not too bad overall. Here's the amplifier layout. It's kind of a classic Class AB design here. Outputs here on one side and then the power supply on the other. And this one does have a single transformer and a choke. And it's a little bit odd to me that they list this as a dual power supply amplifier, because really I only see one power supply, so I'm not real sure what's up with that. That fuzzy logic controller is probably monitoring the voltage, and when it's noticed the voltage gets low, that's when that light comes on. If you stick around to the very end of the video, I'm going to show some more tests where I'm kind of monitoring the clip lights, and also to see if that fuzzy logic LED will come on. So that'll be after the end credits if you stick around to the end. Next up, what we did is we hooked the quad box up as 4 ohms bridge mono by series in the outputs. That gives us right at 4 ohms. And then we bridged the amplifier. So let's try it out and see how it did with the subs. MTX Black Gold 2125. Let's try the woofer test on the quad box wired at 4 ohms. So a few things to note here. First off, the amp got really hot after this one run with the subwoofers. The subs did not seem to thump quite as well as like the Precision Power ProMOS 50, but it did definitely control the subs well. Let's try a little better sound quality demo here of this Black Gold 2125. portraying sound quality over a video is not really possible, but I do like to do this just so you guys can kind of compare the different amps I test. In my opinion, this amp sounded okay, but not superb. A lot of this music is electronic because really that's all we have on YouTube to be able to play back. I'd love to play some other stuff for you, but it is what it is. There you have the test, the MTX Black Gold BGA2125. Amp did its rated power. It was MTX's first in-house design of a car audio amplifier. I think they did a good job. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the test. We had lots of fun playing around with these amps. And hope you'd stick around for the next one. Big D, I'm out of here.
Thing sounds pretty good. You know how them sound waves go?
I have both cameras going. I'm going to try to capture the clip light on the amp to see how it matches up with the dyno. So let's try 4 ohms uncertified to clipping at 40 hertz. Next here, I'm going to slow the clip down just a little bit so you can see the difference between the amp's LEDs, which come on just slightly before the amp dyno. This is normal. This is what we usually see, is the amps are a little bit conservative in that. This next test is dual purpose. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put the microphone over by the amp so you can hear the fan when it comes on during the test. And I'm also going to let the voltage drop a little bit on this 4 ohm mono test, and we'll see what it does. So here we go. Certified 4 ohms mono, 40 hertz. Sounds like the fan's about had it. 536 at 14.22, so it appears this amp does have some regulation built in because there's not a whole lot of difference there between the 14.2 and the 14.54. So there you have it.